I'm Elle, and this is Cosmic Curiosities. Hey friend, and welcome to another episode of Cosmic Curiosities, Cosmic Insights. I'm your host, Elle, and today we are going to be journeying through two different dimensions and discovering more about the concept of time and all of the juicy insights that I found along my journey of past life regression and working with Sari. So first of all, let me ask you, have you ever felt the weight of time pressing down on you? Have you ever felt like you were born into the wrong era? Has deja vu ever whispered forgotten memories, places, and faces, leaving you questioning your place in the grand scheme of time? Well, I have. I have felt the weight of time, and for a lot of my life, it felt like a prison. I constantly felt like I was experiencing constant deja vu, like I had been to this place before, I'd met this person before, or I'd had this experience before. And so often, I felt like I just didn't fit in this time. I didn't fit society's mold of who I should be, what I should be interested in, or what I should be achieving. And this longing for understanding and yearning for belonging is what actually ignited my journey into past life regression. I was trying to find an answer to why I felt like I didn't belong. And as many of you may or may not know, when I first started my journey into past life regression, I came to this realization that a part of my soul had been tethered to another timeline. And this led me to an understanding of why I never felt whole and why I never felt like I belonged in this time. It did take a number of sessions to be able to connect with this missing piece of my soul, but it also took a lot of self-development because I had to create space within myself. And this space had to be a safe environment for this soul piece to want to return. But once it did, I had a completely new understanding of time. Because although my soul was tethered to a different time, in a linear sense, we'd look at it as the past. But was it? And how does the past affect my present? I'm here to answer those questions. Past life regression is not just about exploring the echoes of history. It's about harnessing the power of the past to heal the wounds of the present. And by acknowledging and embracing our multidimensional nature, we unlock the potential for profound healing and transformation. So, let me take you on a little bit of a journey of my past life experiences. Now, some of these I've never shared publicly, so you're in for a scoop. But when I first had my first past life regression experience, I was not in a good place in my life. I felt like, 1, I didn't belong. 2, I felt trapped and imprisoned by time. I constantly felt like I was running out of time, that I didn't have enough time, and I didn't know where I should be spending my time or how. I was in a job that I didn't enjoy, and there were things that my employer would say or ask me to do that I really just didn't understand and I didn't agree with. But not wanting to cause a scene, I agreed or did it anyway, just to keep the peace. So, let me walk you through my first past life regression. In my first past life regression, I found myself in a hotel room And this hotel room didn't look like your standard hotel room. It looked a little bit more old-fashioned, maybe from the 30s or 40s. And I was in there and I was looking for something. I wasn't staying at this hotel, but I was actually working at it. I worked somewhere in the realm of customer service, customer relations, and a high-paying client had asked me to go to their room and retrieve something for them. So I did retrieve this item for them, and I left the room in order to return it to them. But as I left the room, I noticed a baggage cart in the hallway and a bellboy leaving baggage outside of a room. This piqued my interest because it wasn't the normal thing to do. The normal thing to do was to take the luggage and put it inside the client's room. But this bellboy was just going to leave it out the front. So I asked him what he was doing. He told me that he was waiting for the key to get into the room. Seems like a fine explanation. So, as I get in the elevator to go down to the lobby to return my client's item, I come across the hotel manager. He was on his way to deliver a key to the bellhop. So, as we meet in the elevator, he suggested giving him my client's item for him to return, and he would give me the key for the bellhop. Something in me told me this was not a good idea. But, not wanting to argue, not wanting to make a scene, I agreed. I took the key, and I gave the manager the item for the client. I get back up to the floor, and I open the hotel room for the bellhop to enter. And we do indeed leave the luggage inside the room. And we both head back down to the lobby together. Now, as I reach the lobby, the client that I was sent by to retrieve his item was having a very loud disagreement with the hotel manager. It appears that the hotel manager did not return the item, and there was a bit of a disagreement about it. The hotel manager was saying that his staff were sent up there to retrieve the item, but was advised they could not find the item. And the guest was a little bit disgruntled. He knew exactly where his item was and told me exactly where to find it. There was no reason it shouldn't have been there. As I heard this disagreement, I started to question why my intuition told me it was a bad idea in the elevator to exchange the key and the item. I knew something was up, but I never realized just how up and wrong it was. So, the manager calls me over to this disgruntled client. I tell the client that I did in fact retrieve their item, and I gave it to the manager to return to him. The manager, of course, refuses and denies ever seeing me in the elevator. I am severely punished, and I'm fired from my job. Now, something just did not sit with me about this. I was angry, I was upset, but also, why would he lie? So, after being fired from my job, I waited at the staff entrance of the hotel, waiting for my manager to finish his shift, so that we could talk about this, so that I could have an understanding of why he would lie. Maybe it was a miscommunication. Maybe he thought I gave him someone else's possessions, and I just needed to understand. As I'm waiting at the staff entrance, a lot of trucks are coming and going. You see, the staff entrance was at the kitchen, so food was usually delivered, and that was a normal thing. However, as I was waiting, I realized that things weren't being delivered, but things were actually being collected. Baggage was actually being collected. And as I started to question what was actually happening, I went to inspect the baggage. And as I did, the hotel manager walks in. confronts me about what I'm doing, and I ask him why he is allowing people to come and collect baggage that does not belong to them. What is he doing with it? This confrontation gets a little bit physical. He pushes me, and I end up hitting my head on a steel bench in the kitchen, falling to the ground. Have you ever heard that saying, curiosity kills the cat? Yeah, that's kind of where this is going. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and fearful of what he had done, he began to drag my body into the walk-in freezer. When I started to come to, I tried to get up and defend myself, but instead ended up impaling myself on a meat hook hanging in the freezer. Terrified of what he had done, he left me there, and someone else cleaned up the mess. I died in a hotel freezer, not trusting my intuition. And although this might be a little bit triggering, and I apologize if it is, I should have given a warning beforehand, but this memory, this experience, it took away my fear of death, because although it sounds like a gruesome experience, it actually was quite peaceful. But also, I recognized the hotel manager in that regression. Although it wasn't the same person and they didn't look the same, they had the same soul energy as my employer in my current lifetime at that time. And so, there was a lesson here for me. A lesson about trusting my intuition and trusting my standing on my morals and my ethics. You see, because I was repeating these past patterns from past lifetimes, my scars from those lifetimes were beginning to physically manifest in different ways. You see, before I had this regression, I had this infection that kept showing up on my back, near my spine. Doctors couldn't really tell me what it was. All they knew was that there was an infection in the muscle and in the tissue near my spine. But coincidentally, this infection, this lump, was right where this meat hook had pierced me. It was if I was repeating my past life mistakes. I was not trusting my intuition, and I was not upholding my morals and ethics. I was trying to keep the peace. And so I actually had to have this surgically removed. And it wasn't until I actually left that job that it actually healed. So as I moved on in my regression, I had a few other lifetimes that I saw, but there was also one of royalty. And most regressions that I have seen or experienced with clients, royalty is not something that you want to be. Every person that I know that has lived a royal life has been miserable. It is not a nice experience. And I can actually testify to that. It is not one that I would wish upon anyone. And a lot of people ask me what royal family I was a part of. And I'm just going to tell you right now, it was not the British one. But instead of telling you, I'll tell you the details. Because who I was doesn't actually matter. It's about what I learned from the experience. So, in this particular regression, I was born in Germany. My life in Germany was well off, and I had a younger sister, very, very much younger than me. She was a toddler, and she was my world. I adored her. But I did have to leave to be married, and I was being married to the Tsar of Russia. So off to Russia I went, and my welcoming to Russia was not great. I was very much considered the outcast because of my German heritage, and I was a lot more educated than other women. I spent my time reading, learning, and this wasn't the common thing. But when my husband began participating in a war, something didn't feel right to me. I knew that he was going to fuck it up. I knew he wasn't handling things the way that he should. And in my opinion, he was really quite an idiot. And how he was able to run a country, I have no idea. And so I began to create allies within our circles and trying to influence my husband's decisions. It didn't go over that well. But I knew I had to make change. I knew that the women here deserved more than just being used for sex and to breed. I knew there was more to it than that. So I had plans to overthrow my husband. I had a lot of support. I knew I could do it. But suddenly my husband fell ill. And I thought, this is my easy way out. He's so unwell, there's no way he could survive. But lo and behold, he does. And I was panicking. I thought, my gosh, how am I going to overthrow him? How am I going to get rid of him? So, in order to secure my standing, I decided to have a child with him, thinking that if I did overthrow him, no one could question my claim to the throne if I had a child with him, if I had an heir that was of pure and royal blood. So I did. And eventually, after much negotiation, much war, much torment, my husband finally handed the throne over to me. Now, there were a lot of conspiracies on what happened to him, none of which I really saw. But I remember him being prisoner, and my son was actually quite scared of me. But I achieved what I needed to achieve, and I stopped at nothing. When I eventually died, I had a stroke, and I died a few days later, surrounded by the people that I cared about. But I wasn't afraid to die. I was actually really excited. The younger sister that I mentioned earlier, she died shortly after I left for Russia, and I missed her greatly. And as I died, I saw myself being reunited with her, and I couldn't have been happier. But when I left this regression, having experienced what I experienced in the hotel, and then again as royalty, I became a new person. When asking my higher self and my spirit guides why they showed me these lifetimes in particular, it was to know that nothing could stand in my way. And if I could do everything that I could back then, what was stopping me now with all the resources that I have available to me? In my present timeline, I have more flexibility, more privilege, more resources, more opportunities than I ever did in any of those lifetimes. So what was I doing with it? This shift in perspective changed my life. It led me to embracing who I am and my abilities and no longer hiding them. It was the catalyst to me starting my business and training as a past life regressionist. And now I use timeline exploration to travel to the past, to the future, and I've seen so much of my life and others. In fact, I've been able to travel through timelines and change the past in order to change the present. So I don't have to heal from something that hasn't happened. But yet, I still have the wisdom from it. But it doesn't affect me in the way that it did. This is how timeline exploration can help change your present and help you create your future. It's not about living in the past. It's not about finding an excuse for why you are the way you are. But it's having the capabilities and the realization that time is malleable. And we aren't just the actors in our movies. We're also the director, the writer, the editor. We have so much more power than we think we do. When talking about timelines, there is so much information I can share. I don't even really know where to start. I mean, I had every intention of sharing insights on this episode, and yet somehow I ended up sharing my story and my perspective change. But maybe that's what you needed to hear today. You needed to hear about my transformations so that you can understand how I found myself journeying through time and why my journeys through time and my clients' journeys through time aren't just about the past. It's not just learning a lesson, but it's also inspiration, guidance, a reminder that you do have a place and you do belong in this time. Every life has a purpose. Every life has a lesson. So maybe this is an episode that needs to be continued, to share a little bit more insight on the concepts of time and timeline exploration. But today, I think you got just what you needed. And if you're interested in traveling through time, I would love to be your guide. But until next time. This is your Earthside Spirit Guide signing off. Thanks for joining me for today's Cosmic Insight. If you're ready to unleash the magic of your soul and want to work with me, you can send me a message on Instagram at elle.embers or visit my website, elleembers.com.